Story 1. Real story: kids aged 8 and 10 came home with a note, freaking out that the school was going to force them to allow doctors to look at their privates. Everyone in class was stressed over this. Upon reading the note I had to sign, it said curvature of the spine exam, and boys and girls will be screened in private areas. Story 2. Ha! My grade school principal tried to convince me not to call my mother when I had broken my arm on the monkey bars. She was upset about that. Edit. Quote from my mom to my principal. It infuriates me that you breathe the same air as I do. Story 3. Argued with me about son safety. More specifically, my son wanted to wear long pants when he was supposed to wear shorts. I let him wear them. They were the same as the shorts required, just long. The vice principal called me to take me to task and told me that he could not possibly get sun damage on his legs because the kids do not stop moving. I told her to cut it out and that she knew that was nonsense. I live in Australia. Story 4. My kid went on an overnight school trip. I got multiple messages and emails from the principal saying he had snuck out in the middle of the night and jumped off a dock into the lake. When he got home, we asked him about it. He started laughing. He thought we were messing with him because he had no idea what we were talking about. My kid can be a troublemaker, so I emailed the principal and a couple of teacher chaperones to get more information. The teachers told me they had no idea what I was talking about. It was the first they were hearing about any incident at camp. The principal went silent, dodged my emails and calls. A week later, she apologized to my son by saying, "Sorry, I must have mistaken some wildlife for you. Tell your mom you're all good." Never heard from her directly, and a year later, he's still going on field trips and there was no follow-up. Such an unnecessary, heavy accusation. Never really regained confidence in the school leadership. Story 5. During the protests in Hong Kong, the kindergarten told us not to allow the child to wear a face mask or risk being detained by police or mistaken for a rioter. The child was 6 years old at the time, a very dangerous age. Story 6. There was set to be a really good solar eclipse in 2015, and despite the children all having safety viewing glasses, the school intended to keep the children in the hall to watch on television instead. The eclipse was expected at 9:30 a.m., so I asked if I could take him to watch the eclipse and return him to school immediately after, and they said no, it would be recorded as an unauthorized absence if I did. So I did anyway. It was a once-in-a-childhood educational opportunity that the school planned for them to miss. I took him to a nearby beach, where we were plunged into darkness. It was awesome. I took him to school straight afterward and have not an ounce of regret. We've not had an eclipse like it since. Story 7. My kid's elementary school issued a policy that the child who, in an argument, delivered the last hit or blow would be punished. However, they did absolutely nothing about bullying, so often the child hitting was a child hitting back or defending themselves. So if someone punched my child and my child hit back, my child would be punished. Once, a little girl in first grade was attacked by a much older boy. She was very much into martial arts and dislocated his shoulder in the fight. They called in her parents and wanted to start some disciplinary action against the girl. The mother very clearly told them to stop, and if they failed to protect her daughter, she would make sure the girl could defend herself. Story 8. Not a parent, but my younger sister's elementary school banned the Nike Just Do It shirts because they were suggestive. Suggestive about what and to whom? Story 9. That children were not allowed to have a best friend. If two kids got along too well, the teachers would intentionally separate them by switching desks, put them in different groups, and not let them be partners on projects. They would even interfere with their recess and let one child out on time and the second a minute or so late, hoping the first would start playing with other kids before the best friend came out. Story 10. I was a teaching assistant in a preschool special education program, primarily with kids with autism on all ends of the spectrum. They had a policy of us not being allowed to use the word no, and instead saying not a choice and offering alternatives. Okay, brilliant. But there was an incident where a child wanted a toy another child was playing with. He started hitting him in the face and pushing him, trying to take the toy, and he was much bigger. I rushed over and said, "No, stop." I caught his hand and said, "Not a choice," and redirected him to other toys. The teacher scolded me for telling him no and getting hands-on by catching his hands. I told her there is a time and place for the word no, and attacking another child needs immediate intervention. I am not going to reason and hope it works. I stood my ground on that one, but I spoke to both parents personally, and they both thanked me for intervening. Story 11. During the summer holidays one year, we dyed the last 6 inches of my daughter's long hair reddish purple. It had faded a fair bit by the time school started again, but we still braided it and put it up in a neat bun so no color could be seen. One day it started to fall down after a physical education lesson, so instead of simply helping her tuck it back up, the teacher called me to tell me off for allowing her to have colored hair. I was incredulous and let the teacher know exactly what I thought of her decision to drag a 10-second tidy-up job into a disciplinary issue involving a phone call. That woman was a pill. Story 12. Didn't give my son an ice pack to put on an injured knee until they could speak to me and get permission. I was at work and couldn't respond immediately, and they didn't bother calling anyone else on the list, because according to them it is a medical procedure, so they need parental permission. I don't even really care about the ice. It was a very minor injury, but I was baffled by their reasoning. Story 13. They made my husband leave work 40 minutes away to put disinfectant spray and a bandage on our 8-year-old son's slightly scraped knee that absolutely didn't require either, and he could have done it himself because they're not allowed to administer medicine. Story 14. The kids had to invite their entire grade to their birthday party. The entire grade consisted of about 40 to 60 kids, depending on what year you were in. If you weren't wealthy enough to rent a venue, then you just couldn't have a birthday party. My sister wanted to invite around 7 people from her class and have a small birthday party in our living room, but the school said that was exclusion. My mom asked, "So 8 people are excluding 32 people?" Story 15. My 6-year-old daughter was followed by a classmate on her bus. He's not usually on that bus. He pulled her hair, punched her in her belly, punched and pinched her private area, and put his hand in her underwear to try to put his fingers inside of her. I went absolutely feral. I called everyone. When I reached the school, after I explained what happened, barely containing my rage, asking what was going to be done next and how did this boy get on my daughter's bus, all the director could think to ask me was, "Well, where's the boy now? He's not on his bus?" Respectfully, I do not know. I do not care. I called our equivalent of Child Protective Services and everyone I could think of, made multiple complaints. He was transferred to another class and that's pretty much it. That little boy needs help. That's not normal. And little girls need to be better protected from him and others like him. This blew up. Thanks to everyone who offered advice or support. I brushed over the event. It happened over the course of about 2 weeks. At first, I really pushed to get help for my daughter and she was evaluated regarding all this. Turns out, she didn't view it as sexual assault and was more traumatized by the punch than the abuse. She liked the little boy prior to this, and my poor sweet girl never experienced this kind of violence before. The boy was sent to another class, which made her happy, and she spent a day at home with us. Then we all went to the school to talk with the principal and she told us she was eager to go back to class. She loved school. I had called our equivalent of Child Protective Services and was appalled to learn they didn't go through with anything. When I was told that, I did threaten to both go to the media and leak the story to other moms. I told them that I was sorry for that boy, as he clearly needs help. No kid does something like that, at that age without a deeper reason. But that if they refused to follow through, I would make sure no other child went through what my daughter went through. I never told anyone in the end, but I really wanted them to do something both for him and potential future victims. Upon hearing this, they told me that they could not release more information, but that if they didn't follow through, it meant that the parent or someone else had done something they saw as enough for the boy. We needed to keep filing complaints with different people, but eventually, someone told me she was also a mother, and she knew my pain, and she vowed on everything dear to her the boy was seeing someone. This was later confirmed by my own daughter when she came back from school and told me the boy had asked her if she had been seeing doctors as well. In the end, we really did everything we could, and for our mental health and our daughters, we decided to take a step back. Seeing us angry and crying over the story when she was just a bit scared that she had been hit was confusing for her, and she was moving on perfectly fine. She did see someone one last time who agreed that she was fine with what happened. I did call the principal again to tell him that the boy had gone to talk to my daughter, and he took care of it. Our community also rallied around my daughter. Our community center offered a free meal once a month after the bus ride home. A pizza night where everyone on the bus socialized, which reduced bullying, forged friendship, and made sure that the kids knew who was supposed to be on the bus, meaning they will spot an intruder next time. We are so grateful for this initiative. We also contacted the bus company to know how this could have happened, but never got anywhere with them. Regardless of everything, my daughter is fine, and it made me realize that I need to deal with my own trauma regarding sexual assault in order to be a better mother in case something ever happens again, as schools are not helpful. Also, we never knew his parents. We had just started school and we only moved here a couple of months ago. They told us they were cooperative. Maybe they didn't even know the boy had been, probably, abused. Maybe it was an uncle or grandparent or neighbor. Maybe it really did help him. I hope so. I hope one good thing came out of this, at least, but I will never know. And I did try to file a report, but since he's under 11, it's useless here. He cannot be accused of sexual assault here under 11. Also, I was so happy. I always encouraged my daughter to confide when something weighs on her mind and always gave her the tools to recognize when something feels wrong. She has a beautiful emotional intelligence. She knows her body parts and which should be private. She felt safe enough to tell us as soon as it happened. She is such a gem. And sorry for my English, I speak French. Story 16. My son was being physically bullied by another kid who apparently had issues. He informed the teachers and nothing happened. He came home very upset after a week of this and finally told me. That weekend, I taught my son the basics of self-defense and told him he had my full permission to flatten the bully if he tried it again. Monday morning, I went to the school with my son and told them that he would now be defending himself from assault as permitted by law. The school had a no-hitting policy that apparently applied even if you were being hit by someone else. I warned them that this was actually illegal and against our country's legislation, and that regardless of their policies, my son would exercise his legal right to defend himself by punching the bully in the face as hard as he could if the bully tried to start something. Miraculously, they were suddenly able to keep the bully under control, and there were no further problems. Story 17. My daughter was in the school play in 3rd grade. She was one of about 40 kids in the ensemble. They just stood or sat in place on the risers for the entire show and sang. She had no individual role or lines at any point. There were 3 shows, one of which overlapped a Girl Scout event that had been previously scheduled to take place at our house. When I told her she would have to miss one of the shows, she just shrugged and said okay. She then went to school and told her teacher this, and he proceeded to give her a long lecture on how she would be letting down the entire cast and it would ruin the whole show for her to miss it. He told her she was obligated to skip Girl Scouts because she was committed to the play. Never mind that she was committed to the Girl Scout event long before the school even mentioned there was going to be a play, and we would have to cancel the whole event since we couldn't exactly host while also being at the school with her. We did end up having to reschedule anyway because a few others couldn't make it, but I'm still not happy with her teacher over it, and she did not join the play this year. Story 18. When I was in high school, I went into my mathematics class. 2 girls I knew told me they thought they saw one of our classmates with a knife hidden in his waistband. I asked if they were going to tell the teacher. They said no because he sits on the other side of the classroom, so it's not like we would be stabbed. I went to tell the teacher. The teacher made a phone call, and a few minutes later, the student was called to the office. Next class period, I got called to the office. The administrators grilled me aggressively about it, as if I did something wrong or was in on it with the other student. They also searched my bag. When they found nothing suspicious on me, they showed me the 10-inch hunting knife they took off the student. They told me that he said he brought it to scare some kids who were picking on him, but he never intended to use it. This was 2 years after the Columbine incident, and the school had a zero-tolerance policy. The student was sent back to class, and his father was called to come pick up the knife. There was no other punishment. The next day, the whole school was gossiping about the situation, and they all knew it was me who turned him in. The 2 girls who originally told me they saw the knife were angry at me for telling because now everyone knew they were also involved and feared retribution from the knife guy.